more bikeable. So imagine having everything that you need within 15 minutes of your home without having to use a car. Planners say that it's good for your well-being and it can help tackle climate change. And we're already seeing it pop up in places like Paris. So pretty straightforward, right? So why is it associated with conspiracy theories? The idea has been embedded in theories like QAnon and the Great Reset, people worried about major takeovers and control, and that it's a surveillance strategy.
This conspiracy theory expert explains some of the fears.
If we go outside of that 15-minute blockage around our homes, then we will get targeted by the social credit digitally, and our banks won't work, our ID won't work, and we won't be able to leave that area. You will be punished. So if you actually drove outside of it and you needed gas, you couldn't get gas, or something would happen to your car to shut it down and you wouldn't be able to leave. So it's linked to all of these conspiracy theories of enslavement and control.
But that's not what's happening in the places where the idea is being implemented or being floated.
Fears have played out in places like Oxfordshire in the UK. The community approved traffic restrictions to deal with congestion at peak hours. It's led to protests there, people saying it's a threat to freedom of movement, and some are incorrectly linking those policies to 15-minute cities. One Windsor resident points to Oxfordshire as an example of what she doesn't want in this region.
Are they going to restrict people going, from one zone to the other? Because, you're using you've got too big of a carbon footprint, because that's what we're seeing that it's being connected to. They're not saying that in England, but it's obviously they want to see less cars.
So how is this connected to the County of Essex? Hundreds showed up at a special meeting meant to discuss the county's new official plan, which is currently being developed. And the goal of the plan is meant to help manage the region as more people are expected to move into the community.
It has nothing to do with 15-minute cities. You can trust me on that. It is not.
Now, nowhere does it mention 15-minute cities, but because it does make mention of climate change action and things like improved walkability, some people are linking the two together as a step in that direction, and then come all the conspiracy theories attached to that.
It was concerning because I received a lot of emails and phone calls in advance, and we were trying to respond to the phone calls and emails, and we just couldn't get the messaging turned around sufficiently. Unfortunately, this confusion and misinformation is being spread throughout Canada. So we happened to experience this last week in Essex County, but we're certainly not the only ones.
County officials are stressing that not only is the 15-minute concept not what people are fearful it is, it's also not at all on the table at the County of Essex. In other local news, it turns out that Sunday is the busiest day of the week at local library branches, at least the ones that are open. As TJ Deere tells us, people want to see extended hours.
Well, it's something for me to do with her because there's not a ton of stuff that we can do unless the weather's nice.
That's why Haley Randall goes to the library on Sundays with her 8-month-old daughter, Stella. Right now, the library is in its winter hours. Only 3 branches are open on Sundays from 1 to 5 p.m., but during its summer months, all 9 branches will be closed on Sundays. Randall didn't know about the change at first.
This is like one of the further libraries from our place, and we drive out to this one because the ones around us are closed. So yeah, that's gonna suck in the summer for sure.
Data from the Windsor Public Library shows that last year, Sundays had the highest average number of visitors per hour. This was higher than the average number of visitors across all 9 branches on all days of the week.
It's often difficult to get a table just because everybody wants to be here.
The library's manager of public services says a variety of people show up to the open branches on Sundays.
A lot of high school kids come here to Budimir especially and get their group projects done on a Sunday. We have a lot of people who just come and they like to look over their stock market picks for the week, and this is a great time for them to spread the newspapers across the table and just go to town on it.
Another Sunday regular said he was astonished by the limited hours and wants to see them extended in the winter and the library open in the summer.
We're going out with our families, with our kids. They want to read. And we especially, most of the people work. So if on our days off we can't go to the library, when are we going to go to the library then?
Ward 4 Councillor Mark McKenzie is the chair of the library board. He said he wants to see expanded hours on Sundays as well, saying the board will discuss this with the union that represents library workers. But all of that costs money, and McKenzie said the library would have to access their reserve fund to cover this year's budget shortfall. TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
Ontario's education minister wants to give himself more power over school boards and what they teach. He says it's about improving student success. He's also proposing giving more control to his ministry over school buildings. Lorenda Redicop has more.
The education minister says he wants schools going back to basics in areas such as math and reading.
The government is introducing the Better Schools and Student Outcomes Act.
He tabled his bill this afternoon.
We believe through this increase of investment and overhaul of the system, we can do better, lift our standards.
He announced 1,000 more teachers to prepare for de-streaming when students start high school, and a 2.7% increase for school boards, though critics note the amount is below the level of inflation.
It is more smoke and mirrors from a minister who will do literally anything but take responsibility for his own underfunding of education and the impact that that's having on kids.
School boards are surprised by the push to go back to basics.
School boards across Ontario have no problem with focusing on arithmetic and reading and writing because that's what we do. That's already what we are doing.
Minister Lecce also says some schools are underperforming. Under his plan, boards will have to publicly post an improvement plan. One teachers union says more staff is what students and their parents really want.
Sure, maybe they want to see a chart on a board website about the priorities, but they want to know that their students get the attention and support that they need.
Lecce also proposes more training for school board trustees and a process to resolve disputes. He gave the example of the board in Peel. The government took control there after problems with racism.
I don't want to step in any further. I want school boards to be more functioning, more professional bodies.
The legislation would also allow building of schools to be sped up, for empty schools to go to another school board or be used for something else.
Well, then we could put it to use for things like LTC or affordable housing or social housing or things like this that are actually pretty critical right now.
But the province doesn't allow for the closing of schools. One public education advocate criticizes how the government developed the legislation.
What is surprising about this is a big piece of legislation, and it appears to have been crafted with no previous consultation. It seems to be a surprise to everybody working in the system.
Consultations will come before the bill is passed. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
MPPs debating the government's latest proposed housing bill at Queen's Park. The Helping Homeowners Protecting Tenants Act is in its second reading today.
Our government believes that it doesn't matter where you live in Ontario, it should be a place to grow. The new policy would provide municipalities with a variety of things. Flexibility, the opportunity to create more homes in both urban and rural communities. It will support local economies, it will create jobs.
Bill 97 aims to introduce amendments to the Building Code Act and Residential Tenancies Act. The housing minister says the bill would make several small changes to key pieces of land use legislation that would help the government meet its goal of building 1.5 million new homes over the next decade. NDP MPPs are asking for clarity on how the bill would affect sprawl and green space in the province. And more than 155,000 public servants will go on strike Wednesday if their union doesn't reach a deal with the federal government by tomorrow night. Kate McKenna has more on a labor dispute that could have a big impact on many services, including processing tax returns.
Thank you. After nearly 2 years of negotiating, an ultimatum.
We're setting a clock on this round of bargaining. If there is no deal reached by 9 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, April 18th, I am authorizing a national general strike beginning at 12:01 a.m.
The main sticking point is wages. The union says workers are feeling the pinch of inflation.
Workers are fed up. We watch corporations make record profits, but yet nobody wants to pay working people.
If a strike goes ahead, it'll be the largest public sector strike in decades.
0%
Canadians could expect delays in processing tax returns, passports, even traveling across the border.
Will the government get serious and negotiate a fair contract that respects the public service workers?
The government is committed to reaching agreements at the bargaining table that are fair for the employees and reasonable for taxpayers. We have a good offer on the table, and there's enough ground to reach a deal.
PSAC is Canada's largest federal public sector union. It says it intends to use its size to pressure the government into giving them the best possible deal, setting the bar for future negotiations. But some warn that comes at a cost to taxpayers.
It's completely unsustainable, and quite frankly, many Canadians across the country are worried about gasoline, worried about the price of groceries. Many Canadians are worried about losing their homes as mortgage payments go up, and they can't afford these government union demands.
The union says if it comes to a strike, they're prepared to picket for as long as it takes. They've even set up porta potties outside for their members. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
You heard about possible delays at the border if there's a strike. So how bad might it be? The Canada Border Services Agency tells us things should be relatively normal if any action is taken. That's because a large majority of its unionized employees are not affiliated with the Public Service Alliance of Canada. However, the union is saying this will impact border crossings. Something to keep in mind for the cross-border commute this week. 10 months after the federal government froze funding for Hockey Canada, the money is flowing again. The government says the governing body will tackle problems regarding safety, sexual violence, and the culture of silence. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today said he is confident that change will happen and said the government will monitor the progress.
We put extremely clear expectations before Hockey Canada, before we would restore funding to them. They have indicated a real willingness to move forward on that, but we are going to continue to be extremely vigilant.
Ottawa withdrew funding last June after it was revealed the organization used registration fees to settle cases of alleged sexual assault. Since then, Hockey Canada's board of directors has been replaced and its governance has been overhauled. Hockey Canada received almost $8 million from the government in the 2022 fiscal year. Government funding comprises about 7% of the organization's overall revenue. Downtown Windsor lost a longtime patron and friend over the weekend. Dr. John Dickinson, or simply Dr. John to his friends, was a fixture on the Windsor bar and art scene for decades. The University of Windsor economics professor was a quiet and thoughtful man. He was known to cultivate and encourage musicians and artists whom he appreciated. Condolences have been pouring in on social media platforms, with many sharing memories and stories of John and the impact that he had on their lives. CBC Windsor spoke to some of those who got to know Dr. John over the years.
I'm absolutely confident in knowing that I can speak for many, many musicians when I talk about the impact John had. Sometimes I think when you work in the creative world, you wonder how worthwhile your expressions are. With music, there's a lot of late nights, and you wonder if it's worth a lot of empty venues. And John just had this ability to make sure that you knew that what you were doing was worthwhile and important, and that he heard you. It wasn't like charity. He connected like on a real level that made you feel like you were seen, heard, and loved. It wasn't just his presence at our gigs, which he was always present at our gigs, but he would offer to take musicians to the symphony. He would offer to take you to a hockey game at Joe Louis. He would slip you 2 tickets to the Tigers. And I think a lot of musicians, we live often on the cusp of poverty, so we can't really afford to do things like that. So not only would he make you feel important at your own performances, he would take you somewhere. John always made his presence known with a laugh, and he was always good-humored and very, very generous. The tip jar would be a lot fatter after John left your gig, and he just expressed his generosity in a lot of different ways.
It was not unheard of for him to come in for a $5-10 cover event and put a $100 bill in the jar. And that wasn't just random, and it wasn't just, purely generous. It was an appreciation. And that's the great thing about John, is that he appreciated what you were doing, both in the hospitality but also in the arts sector. I think it would be a great event to do something like a pub crawl in his honor or something in the summer months, and to actually, everybody will have Strongbow and Jameson's on special that night, and people can just swap stories and tell stories.
So touching to hear some of those memories. Our condolences to Dr. John's family and friends. A live look outside there. What a difference in a couple days, eh? We went from heat and sun and now gray and showers, and more of that tonight and tomorrow, unfortunately, as well. Colette Kennedy will join us after the break with more. Stay with us. Well, we knew it was coming, but that does not make it any easier. Today was cold. A look outside this afternoon, not enough of this stuff to pile up. No snowmen in the city today, but it was a real harsh reminder that summer may not be as close as we thought that it was. And with that, we're going to bring in Colette Kennedy. Colette, I'm sad. It wasn't nice today.
Yeah, that's a really harsh reminder, right? And it's also a type of precipitation that can fool some folks, because I don't know if you saw it very closely there, but it's like those little tiny styrofoam balls in terms of the shape. They're cylindrical, hard. It's grapple. So it's like it's snowing. It looks like it's maybe snowing, but in fact, we get snow that has these super cooled rain droplets that then freeze on it and create these hard little balls that are kind of like hail, but they're formed completely differently. because hail
I
happens
totally
in
thought
a
it was
thunderstorm.
hail earlier, so this is news to me. Thank you.
And you know what? A lot of folks do make that. They're hard little things of ice, right? They're falling on you. So there are a lot of similarities. Hail formed in thunderstorms, however, and we can see grapple at other times of the year, but it usually happens with wintry systems. All right, let's talk about what's going on here, the big picture. Breezy conditions, yes, for a little while longer tonight into tomorrow morning. Then we should find those winds kind of easing off, at least the gustiness of them. I know you thought it was April showers. We just talked about the grapple. What's with the flurries? And there's still some flurries in the forecast overnight tonight with the cooler temperatures we'll see through the overnight and even into tomorrow. Not a lot of moisture left behind, but a slight chance we could have a few wet flurries out there. But by Thursday, this is the good news part of it. If you'd like it to be warm again, we can take tonight's low and add more than 20 degrees to that in terms of where we're going to be for the high by the time we get to Thursday. So warmer temperatures are coming back towards us. Daytime highs today, just having a look at some of those double digits that we're still holding on over towards Lake Ontario into eastern Ontario. Those were around midnight because they had to accept the cold air moving in as well. Our current temperatures, and I was just checking the dew point, it's below freezing. So a good chance that we're not going to be steady here, that we're actually probably going to drop a few more degrees here through the overnight hours. All right. Talked about some of those winds. Those are the sustained ones. The winds are close to 40 kilometers an hour, and then the gusts stronger over top of that. The radar picking up the mix where we get into the purples. Of course, that's some light, wet snow, a few dustings possible up towards the Bruce Peninsula or into some of the higher elevations, but primarily we're just talking about stuff that doesn't stick around, but you're just going to see it and you're going to notice it, especially coming off of the run that we've just been going through. We will get into some clearing as we get into Wednesday, so the sun coming back for Wednesday, we will see the temperatures by then rebounding a bit, and then the warmer air is going to come in along a warm front with a chance for some showers later on Wednesday as that moves in. But look at some of these readings overnight tonight. That's a bit of a shock to the system, and it'll cool start tomorrow morning in terms of what we'll be experiencing. Hoping to get to 9 degrees tomorrow. I say it like that because I'm a little reluctant as to whether that will occur. Could be slightly cooler. 15 for Wednesday, and there you go. How about some mid-20s coming back? No grapple to be found on Thursday. I don't expect hail either, but it would be more a chance for that than the grapple.
Excellent. No, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, a big change to CBC's activity on Twitter. We'll tell you about it after the break. Canadian Broadcasting Corporation has stopped posting its news on Twitter. It's because of a new label the social media company has slapped on the CBC. That happened days after a tweet by a Canadian politician. Thomas Daigle explains.
Canada's public broadcaster says it won't be tweeting for now, amid a spat over its funding and editorial independence. At issue is Twitter's move to tag CBC's corporate page as government-funded media, a label demanded by the leader of the opposition when Pierre Poilievre told Twitter's owner, Elon Musk, Canadians need to be protected against disinformation and manipulation by state media.
The fact that he has to run to American billionaires for support to attack Canadians says a lot about Mr. Poilievre and his values.
The news continues here, of course, on BBC One.
Twitter recently started applying similar labels to broadcasters like Britain's BBC and U.S. National Public Radio. BBC fought the move and got its label changed to publicly funded. According to Twitter's own definition, when an outlet is tagged government-funded, it means there may be varying degrees of government involvement over editorial content. Just the type of perception that media outlets want to avoid, says this former editor.
News organizations that are funded in that way need to have a very firm arm's length relationship and be able to say we are independent and we are trusted.
Through a parliamentary appropriation, CBC and the French-language Radio-Canada receive more than $1 billion a year in public funding. But the Broadcasting Act states the corporation remains editorially independent of the government.
CBC has no track record being a propaganda to Canadian government in any time of the history.
The Crown Corporation insists its journalism is impartial. CBC says it reached out to Twitter and will pause its use of the platform to share news with its audience. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Hundreds of kite enthusiasts are flying high this week. They are showcasing their designs at an international kite festival in eastern China. Thousands of kites have filled the sky during the annual event, which attracts visitors from around the world. It looks amazing. The festival runs from April 15th to May 20th and includes a wide range of activities, from lantern and fireworks shows to musical performances and food fairs. The highlight is a series of kite flying competitions. There is a rich history of kite craftsmanship in the area. 70% of the world's kites are made there, so no doubt about it, this is a great place to go fly a kite. And before we go, let's take a look at a big spring cleanup that happened this weekend. These are some of the volunteers who helped clean up the watersheds around Windsor on Saturday. Dozens of people coming out to help. And you can see the trash bags piling up, a sign of just how much litter ends up along the waterfront. Organizers say that's why these events are so important. And these cleanups were part of Earth Month, the Detroit River Canadian Cleanup Group, one of the lead organizers. So how much trash did they pick up? More than 1,000 pounds of litter. And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For more, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. And you can also find us on social media on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.